And once again, very welcome to all of our attendees this morning. We'd like to say thank you for taking the time out on Tuesday mornings to join our Toolbox Talks. Obviously, we want to encourage you to transform your occupational health and safety systems to the benefit of your employees whose health and safety is paramount to your company. We also want to ensure that the safety on site gets done in a way that benefits you in the eyes of your clients and your customers, so that they see that you really take occupational health and safety seriously. But at the same time, as IOPSA, we want to ensure that our members are constantly provided for and always in the forefront of safety management systems. So we'd like to hear from you. Please reach out to us, safety@iopsa.org, or WhatsApp us on 07187520070, and tell us what you would like to see for the rest of this year. Now, this is the final reminder to get in touch with us. Obviously, we'll keep asking you to let us know what you would like. But basically, by next week, we are handing in a profile for the rest of the year in order to give you training in terms of health, safety, and the way forward to managing your own system. So this is really going to be like a little mentorship program for someone in your company. We would like to get you involved. So if you as a business owner can be involved, or if you've maybe chosen somebody in the company and you've identified someone who could take this over, please get in contact with us. Let us know so that we can start the process with you. By the end of this year, we would like to see many more plumbers doing their own health and safety instead of only always relying on consultants. Now, yes, OHSS is a consultancy, and together with IOPSA, we have obviously developed this mentorship program. So it's not like we're saying we do not want you as a client from OHSS. We appreciate all our clients out there, but at the same time, we also want to be able to enable you to do your own safety. And the only way we can do that is to guide and assist you in getting to that point. Then also a very big reminder to continually prevent COVID-19. So wash your hands regularly with soap and water for 20 seconds. If this is not available, try and always keep alcohol-based hand sanitizer with you. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth with unwashed hands. Adhere to your social distancing and avoid close contact with people who are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze with a flexed elbow or tissue and throw the tissue into the bin. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects and surfaces. And if you can, please get vaccinated. Now, coming up today is obviously the final part 3 of Can I Do My Own Safety? Now, why are we discussing this? Well, it's so important that we really want to get you as our members to do your own health and safety. Perhaps some of you are already handling your own safety and you're doing it pretty well. Well, can you also assist? Is there a possibility that you could mentor another company in assisting them in designing their own management systems? Would you like to sponsor a safety management system for other companies that perhaps do not have it? Well, if that's something that you are keen on, please get in touch with us. We definitely want to be able to help the entire plumbing industry really up their safety management system standards this year. And let's try and push forward to 100% of our membership base, either having their own health and safety management system or getting to a higher standard of safety management. I know it's a big ask, but it is something that we can do. Now, the safety thought for this, purely because we are looking at doing our own safety, is one life is worth it. All this work that we are going to be putting in, the amount of free training that OHSS Consulting is designing for you, and all of us here at the safety team, the reason why we are doing this is, if possible, if we could save one life during this year, it is worth it for us. So the time, the effort, the money that we are pushing forward to this for our members is worth it for us if we can just save one life. And we hope you take that safety thought with you during this week as well. So let's get straight into this week's Toolbox Talk. Obviously, we did part 1 and part 2. This was last year. Can you do your own safety? Part 1. Basically, the short answer is yes, you are always able to do your own safety. But there are a few things that you need to get started. And you need to always follow the PDCA system of continual improvement. That is to plan, then do what you've planned, check to see if it is sustainable and efficient. And if there are any shortfalls, act on those shortfalls. And if you're acting on those shortfalls, then you need to plan to prevent it from happening again, do it again, and check it again. And this system of continual improvement will help you to not only improve in your safety management system, but also improve in your skills during this entire year for health and safety. Now, with a little bit of help, we are able to create our own safety management system and develop it into a functional system that will care for the health and safety of your employees. And this is what OHSS, as well as our OPSA, want to assist you as the members with. So let's look at what we discussed in part one. Step number one was involvement and commitment. Now, whatever the management structure or supervision in your company, it remains a critical issue, and it cannot be expressed more that if you do not have the involvement and commitment from management, and we're talking about upper management, not just employees, those employers, those 16 ones, CEOs, upper managers, upper supervisors, if you are not involved in the health and safety system, it will not continue to benefit your company. You will always have shortfalls. And so your commitment and involvement, although only to a small measure, is going to go a long way in continually improving your employees, as well as the safety management implementation. The second step is to ensure that your objectives are clear. Now, PDCA, once again, your objectives for a company is going to be different. Most plumbing companies have very similar objectives, but it will always be different. You see, your company's objectives should be specific to what you want to achieve in terms of health and safety. Keep it positive though. And when you do your plan, do, check, act system within your objectives, then put it down in writing. And once you've done what you've said you are going to do, check to see whether it is actually working, and then act on any of those weaknesses that you may have identified. Step three was risk management. Now, to be able to fully understand your risk, you must be able to understand what your risks are. You see, we have this term in health and safety, sorry, that when you're working, you might perform imagined work. Now, imagined work is things like we put on a risk assessment that something could go wrong, but it doesn't go wrong, and we're hoping it doesn't go wrong. So you're constantly working with this imagined work or this imagined possibility. And what we want you to do is work on actual work. What is currently happening? What is actually happening on site? So to understand your risks, we do not only want to include imagined risks. Yes, it's important for us to see what could go wrong, what the possibility and probability is. That is what risk management is. And we do not go overboard, but we take a look at what are the possibilities. But don't forget to make sure you know and understand what is actually happening on site. And this can only be done by constant monitoring of the actual site. And this comes from supervisors, this comes from managers, observing what is happening on site, checking to see, is the risk assessment that we've actually designed applicable to the job that we are doing? Is it applicable to the site we are working on? Or is there a shortfall in our risk assessment? You see, knowing and understanding what your risks are, the actual risks, will help you to then prevent things from happening later. And that is really what we want to achieve with our management system, preventing incidents and accidents, not just from occurring, but from reoccurring should they happen. Now, in part two of Do Your Own Safety, we discussed the next three steps. Step number 4 was designing safe systems of work. Based off your risk assessment, you would know what tasks you are performing, what tools you are using, and perhaps to a certain degree, what environments you will be working in. When we speak about environments, it could be confined spaces, working at heights, working in ceilings, things like that. You need to then document your procedures on how you are going to get your work done safely. Now, these safe systems of work are basically step-by-step procedures, method statements of how you are going to then do the job, not just task specifically, but then site specifically as well. Remember, every site we get to obviously has its own risks and hazards. Step number 5 was incident management. You would then identify what could go wrong and manage the process. This would be immediate care for first aid, investigating the incident, complying with regulations such as your OSH Act and your general administrative regulations, to record what your incidents and accidents were, and then report them to the Department of Labor or FEM or RMA, depending on who holds your letter of good standing for compensation, especially if you're going to try and send somebody to hospital and then claim for employees' compensation. And so all of that needs to comply with legislation. But then we go a step further. We prevent it from happening again. That is what managing our incidents and accidents are, not just first aid, investigation, and then getting the employee assistance with WCL forms or workman's compensation. We need to prevent it from happening again so that our employees do not get injured again. Then finally, once you've got that successful system that is preventing the reoccurrence, train your employees. Teach them the benefits of not falling back into the same pattern. This becomes a behavior-based safety system. Basically, it's not just a paper that we are listening to or a document that we are reading. It's an actual system that your employees want to follow because they see the benefits, the positives of how the safety system protects them. Step number 6 was emergency management. We know things can go wrong. And from time to time on a site, there might be incidents and accidents that turn into an emergency situation. So what emergencies do you need to plan for? Remember, there are proactive and reactive approaches to both incident management as well as emergency management. So your proactive approaches would be to ensure that you have all your resources available to ensure that if there is an emergency, you limit and mitigate the risk as much as possible. In other words, if somebody's getting injured, you mitigate it to the point that nobody else gets injured during that emergency. This could be something like having a fire on site because you're welding or soldering or brazing on site. Something catches a light and you react by ensuring that you had a proactive measure of bringing a fire extinguisher with you and training a firefighter. So that proactive and reactive approach will then benefit your emergency management system. Now we take a look at the last 3 steps. Step number 7 is contractor management. Then we look at measuring and monitoring. And finally, we end off with change management. This is all to look at controlling and improving our current safety management system. And this all works within the continual professional development, continual improvement, plan, do, check, act. It's a system, it's continual, it's always moving. Now, again, we just want to remind you, if you do not currently have your own safety management system, perhaps you're one of the clients of OHSS and you are purchasing safety files from us for every single site because you want it done site specifically and you need our expertise to design a safety management system for you. We are not saying that we do not want you as a client. In fact, we really appreciate your support and you as a client. What we want to do is help you to do it on your own as well. We're not saying you might never need us. You may still use us for consulting, for training, or for developing a different type of system for perhaps quality management or environmental management, or going full-blown ISO management, depending on what you are going to look forward to in your company. But can you perhaps take on a mentorship program? Or as we mentioned, can you maybe sponsor a mentorship program for a company that cannot afford one? Again, these 9 steps are what we will use to really assist you as a company. Now, all employees, you know that when you are working on site, you perhaps work with a contractor. And contractor management is a very important part of occupational health and safety. There are 3 areas where contract management will affect you as a business. For one, is to your officers to perform work. Please remember that you are responsible for their health and safety. Now, there is a varying degree of responsibility. You see, if you do not have documentation in place, you are 100% responsible for their health and safety. Whereas if you initiate a mandatory 37 agreement, telling them to sign a mandatory agreement with you. This comes from Occupational Health and Safety Act, Section 37.2. They then fill in that documentation. You appoint them as a subcontractor or a contractor for your company. You then monitor the way they perform their works by asking them for their risk assessment, their safe working procedures, their letter of good standing. Perhaps if it's a dangerous type of work that they're performing on your site, you are going to request medicals for their staff. And this doesn't have to be a very difficult safety file. It's a very basic safety file to explain to you what they are going to be doing on site. Now you are limiting your health and safety responsibility. You see, the percentage starts dropping because you're now handing over responsibility to that contractor. What about for your clients? Your clients call you out to perform work on their site. And this is aside from construction. This could be like a corporate client, perhaps a bank. You go in to perform some sort of plumbing work on to have a scaffolding company for you on site. Now, at times, these contractors that come to your client's site fall under work under you. Again, you are responsible for what happens to them and again, there's certain documentation that you must in. Now, liability for health and safety always rests on something that's mainly we call this health and safety that happens. Kareem, sorry, I don't know where I lost you there.
Yes, sorry, Chris, you were talking about when working in construction. It was just about a few seconds ago. Hello, Chris, are you able to hear me?
That we just had just kicked in. Kareem, do I have you back?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes. Sorry about that. I do apologize for that little bit of delay. We're hoping that the internet connection will stay stable. Obviously, with load shedding, the towers do go down. So although we have power, sometimes the actual signal is not too great. So we can get through this without any hiccups. Now, again, as we may are responsible for them, and although your client is ultimately responsible and liable for anything that happens to their site, because they have created the environment where responsibility. The client gets you to sign some sort of documentation, don't they? You have a mandatory agreement between yourselves that you sign with your client. They also issue you a safety specification. So they tell you that while you're on site, you have to follow this set of specifications while performing your work. And if you accept that appointment, you're accepting that specification. So should you deviate from that, the liability is not wholly rested with your client. That is because you've accepted that you need to do things in the correct manner. And if you deviated from it, that is your non-conformance. But often the gap now is between yourself as your client's contractor and your contractor. You see, that gap is where we need you to try and have a look and see, do you have a safety system in place to protect yourself as well as the contractor from anything that could go wrong. It could be incorporating your client's safety management system and giving that to your contractor to tell them you must abide by this while working on site, which will mean that they have to provide you with a risk assessment, a topic scope of work, registers, checklists, whatever is required from that safety system, they need to provide for you. Now, we often get this on sites where they say, asking me safety file, to charge you for the safety file, because it wasn't in my initial quote. Please remember, health and safety is your responsibility as a company. You are responsible for having a safety management system for your company. It is not the responsibility of your client. The same with construction. If you're appointed onto a construction site, you are either going to be a principal contractor, a main contractor, or a subcontractor. Either way, the responsibility is on you to provide a safety management system for that site. Now, if you, as a plumber on site, again, need your own contractor to provide additional works on site, they fall under you. And since they fall under you, it is your subcontractor and you are responsible for them. So again, you need to have certain documentation in place. This all forms part of your safety management system, managing your own contractors. Now, point number 8 is measuring and monitoring. Now, in safety, we always think of what can go wrong, and we apologize for that. We don't want to make it negative, but we need to be realistic. We need to identify what can go wrong. What is the risk? Identifies the possibility of something going wrong and affecting business. And that could be impacts and how it will then hurt your employee, injure your employee, bring them ill health, or even damage the environment or working situation around you. So yes, we do think often of what could go wrong. But what we want you to do is focus on what went right. So yes, you plan for what goes wrong, but focus on what went right. Now, how do we do this? Within the measure and monitoring phase, you still need to gather data on statistics of incidents and accidents that happened, risk analysis, risk assessments, hazard identification, and then you align your risk assessment to prevent further reoccurrences. But you can shift your main focus of measuring and monitoring to a positive. When things go wrong, identify how to fix them. Look for the positive, look for the solution. But when things go right, don't forget to congratulate your employees. Encourage them, tell them what went right, show them the positive side of them, interview them, speak to them, find out how they did it in order to replicate that positive outcome. It will take your whole safety management system and change it from not just, but to positive risk. The words, the positive side of health and safety is the prevention of illnesses and accidents in a way that doesn't bring them down to the negative, but always encourages a positive. And when things go wrong, we very easily jump and show how it went wrong, why it went wrong, and what we can do to prevent it from going wrong. But when it goes right, how much effort do you put in to explaining, congratulating, and encouraging that it actually did go right? If you thought of having a government that constantly said, well done for driving well on our roads, you might laugh at just the very thought of it. You see, when we see a speed cop, we only think of negative. Were we speeding? Are we going to get a fine? Is my car on road? It's always negative. And so there's always a negative connotation around it. This is the same connotation we have with safety officers. When we see them, we constantly think of the negative. What have I done wrong? Let's try and change that perception. Officers, yeah, I wonder what we did right. Let's try and get that mentality in place. That is the only way that we will change the safety management system and the behavior of. Now, whether it comes from an emergency situation and something went wrong and something needed to be changed, you will always do your business. This was an emergency situation under COVID-19 where our business had to change. But how do you as a company handle change? First of all, when something changes, review your risk assessment. Try and identify if there are additional risks, if the risk rating has stayed the same. Has the risk increased, or has the likelihood of the risk decreased? Any change will have an impact on your work as well as your risk profile. So when it comes to change management, the PDCA cycle to change management assures effective measures are taken to adapt to that change. Now, because it is something that is inevitable in any company, whether you change an employee, whether you change a type of working, any of this change needs to be managed basically in conjunction with your risk assessment. We always want to align our risk assessment to any possible. Now, sometimes a change is immediate, like COVID-19. We had to adapt and change to it. But oftentimes, change is occurring. It's taking time. And when this happens, speak to your employees, speak to the safety department, allow them to get on board with the change, allow them to prepare for that change so that you are readily prepared for when it actually happens. Now, just to end off, we've said this in all three parts. Developing a safety culture is really what we want to do. Every group, company develop a culture and maintain positive attitude toward the way an individual employee behaves within a group. It will basically tell you how they will handle the situation within a company. So let's look at your key aspects of what you want to achieve with the safety management system and all three parts of can I do my own safety. Management commitment or on-site inspecting, checking, and that you are part of your very good communication. We cannot stress that of employee participation. Let them be involved in your system of health safety. And then finally, effective training. So don't just train them, but have effective training. Know the outcome of the training and see that they are actually competent to perform the safety training that you have provided. So let us end off there. We look forward to February's Toolbox Talks. Coming up, we are looking for fall arrest. So working at heights, what do you need to know when working at heights, electricity, as well as the dangers. We then look at power tools closer to the end of the month, and then we end off with housekeeping, such an important part of every safety site. Again, the safety for this week is one life is worth it. Take that and really make it a huge initiative for the rest of 2022. So please don't forget those tips to continually prevent COVID-19. We apologize for the hiccup in transmission earlier, but we want to say thank you very much for joining our Toolbox Talk